Alright, hey guys. I'm gonna jump into the question that Mr. Whitefolk had asked me, which was basically how do I cut up the model into layers so that I can use it in the PMX editor. Um, a little difficulty understanding what he meant, but basically in the PMX editor you can edit your model, such as doing vertex animation, stuff like that, and vertex skinning. Um, and in that situation, it's difficult to select certain areas, I believe. And when you have a lot more sub-materials, or materials rather, you can start to hide sub-objects based on materials, which may be beneficial to get things out of the way so you can uh, better accurately grab vertices or whatnot. Okay, so in that case, yeah, you would maybe want to get a more diced up model based on material. But say, for example, you only had two materials, right? And you just have to create more materials. But there's a easy way we can do that, and I'm just going to demonstrate that right now in 3ds Max. So I think first what we'll do is we'll just do a basic concept demonstration just to get the idea across. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fabricate our own little scenes. So I'm going to create a bone chain and just create a sphere. We have to convert this to editable mesh. Okay, so keep that in mind. And now we can just add a skin modifier to it. All right, so we'll just add those two bones. Now 3ds Max will assign default values. Okay, so you don't have to worry about any skinning, but we are going to add a material. So to do that, it's kind of easy. We'll just take a texture and drop it on to the object, and voila, we now have a material. So we're going to make it a multi-material. We're going to add another material. So we're just going to go into polygon mode, select region of polygons, and just drag and drop another texture. And now we have two materials. So we can just check that. So there's only two, okay? So we can export that now. Just keep in mind, you do have to export the model to 3ds and then import it back in to preserve the UVs. If we export this now, it's going to have mapping issues, okay? And we can test that simply by going on this button here. It tells us there's an issue, okay? But I'm just going to skip that. This is explained in the earlier video, so we're just going to skip that step just to save some time. But anyway, we're going to export this out. One. And now we're going to open up the PMX editor, because PMD editor wasn't confusing enough. We got two editors. Okay, so here's the PMX editor. Now if we open up a file, this one called 1, we see that we have our object with the two materials. Just to reiterate, you see this artifact here on the back of the object. As I was explaining, you have to export your object as 3ds. I'll do that in the next demonstration, just so you get an idea, just to, again, reiterate and beat it into your head. But anyway, so yeah, we have that object, two materials. If we go to the material tab, sure enough, two materials. And according to Mr. Whitefolk, what he can do is go into this menu here, and he can toggle off that sub-object or material. Okay, so yeah, that seems like a pretty handy thing, right? Just let's clear that. So yeah, let's discuss how we can actually split this into further materials. One way, which is pretty easy, is we can go into polygon mode, select some polygons, and we can just drag on a new texture to create a new material. So we can select that and then add back the same texture, and now we actually have a texture here, or sorry, a material here, and material here. And that can be demonstrated if I go in polygon mode. If I slide to the bottom here, under material, we can select the various different polygons based on material. Okay, so essentially these are the sub-objects or objects within the object, if you will. So that's one way of doing it, but maybe not as friendly to manage or organize, so we don't really know what's in there, right? So the other way is just basically to the detach part of the model. So what we can do is cut off the skin modifier, obviously, to preserve it, and we can select a region of polygons, and then just simply detach, and we can give it a name. So now we have two distinguishable objects, but inside they have their own division of material, of course. Okay, so this will probably split into 5 materials. 1, 2, 3, 4, plus that little spat that I created up here. Okay, so before we do that, I'm just going to demonstrate another issue that's going to be probably coming up. I'm going to disable the materials, and so we just have the straight shade. You can see with the second method that we used, by detaching them into separate objects, 3ds Max has distinguished the two objects as two separate objects by creating this seam line. All right, so you can clearly see that the two objects are detached, like they're separated. Okay. Now we may or may not want this effect, so to eliminate this seam, what we can do is select both objects and add a edit normal modifier. Okay. And what this allows us to do is select vertices, or rather normal vectors, and we can weld them together. So with the two objects selected, all right, we can actually weld that seam. So we just select that region, or we can select the whole thing. And under here where it says average, we can turn on use threshold and then type in a low threshold, such as 0.001, and we can hit selected. And what you can see here is the seam that was here is now gone. All right. So another plus to this is, since we have this edit normals modifier applied to both the objects at the same time, we can select both of them and still have access to the modifier. This also allows us to right-click and paste on the skin modifier on multiple objects. So I just right-click, paste, and now what it's done is it's applied skin to both my objects, rather than having to select each object and paste on individually. Now the drawback to this is, once you paste it on, you lose the ability to access the edit normal modifier. So make sure you do any normal modifying before you get into that. Okay. And again, before getting into any editing, such as any kind of modifier type of stuff like your normals and your skin modifier, you're going to want to preserve the UVs by exporting to 3ds. So if I check this object, it's a fail, and this one's a fail. So in this scenario, I'm just going to go through the steps just to kind of explain this, I guess, more. So we're just going to make a 3ds file here and delete these objects. Import. Yes. Okay, so again, we're just going to quickly add that edit normals modifier. So select that and weld. Hide that. And we're going to apply the paste, or apply the skin modifier back. Okay, again, two objects. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to export. We're going to call this one 2. Right on. So we're going to go into the PMX editor once again. And open up that file that we just created. So that's the show now. Yeah, but anyway, on the last model we had, you could see that there was an artifact or something spread across the back of the eyeball here. And by doing that trick, by exporting to 3ds and then re-importing, we actually eliminate that issue. All right. So that's just an issue with how I did my programming, but I can get into that later. Right now, we've basically got, those two materials are clearly defined, but in our material tab, we have them divided up into 5 sections. So we can actually section them off piece by piece like this. Okay. And that may help or may not help with editing with the various features in this program. I'm not really familiar with PMX, but yeah, this is supposedly a way to manage your objects and access different things. Okay, so this can be used in combination with reordering objects. So we can move an object up and down in the hierarchy here. Okay, there's another issue here dealing with texture transparencies and stuff, but I'll leave that for another video. Basically, this is the core concept of dicing up your model. Okay.